Okay, the time is 11:41. We're now back on the record.
Do you understand the question that's pending?
Yes.
Can you answer it, please? The objections are noted.
Okay. What direct conversation as far as differentiation as to what type of investigation she wanted? I probably can't answer that because you guys are griping over the wording and stuff like that. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if her wording was to say investigate the corruption or investigate the homicide or death, whatever, if you would. So I don't know that. You probably would have to get that directly from my boss.
Did you discuss, after Michelle met with your boss, did you subsequently discuss the matter with your boss?
Yes.
And was a decision made that you would not proceed with an investigation?
That the state police would not proceed with an investigation. Not me, because it was never perceived that I was going to do it.
Who made that decision? Was that you?
My
Your
boss.
It was your boss's decision?
Yes.
What was the reason for that decision, if you know?
I don't know.
Did the two of you discuss if you believed this was a murder or a suicide?
No.
The two of who?
You and your boss.
No.
Did you and your boss discuss whether this was a murder or a suicide?
No.
Okay, so neither of you had ever expressed any opinions to each other or to anybody else if you believe this was a murder or a suicide?
I didn't to nobody else, but who she talked to, because there's, like I said, there's a chain. Before she makes a decision or something to that effect, it's people she need to talk to. So I didn't discuss it with no other person, no.
Is there anybody who, and I'm going back in time now to your initial meeting with Pazahowski. After that meeting, was there somebody at your office that got back to either Pazahowski? Let me ask it this way. Was there anybody from your office that got back to anybody at Pazahowski's office, you, him, or anybody else, and said, no, we're not going to help you with this investigation or something to that effect?
Objection Foundation.
If you know.
I did not get back with Pazahowski, as I said. I assume, based off the fact that state police wasn't involved, that eventually something was communicated, but I have no idea. I didn't communicate that to him.
But if something was communicated by the Michigan State Police, it was not by you, it was by somebody else?
Yes.
Okay. Sitting here today, you've had a chance to review a number of documents that obviously you did not have. Well, let me rephrase the question. As of May 20th, 2016, have you reviewed the police reports that are involved in this case?
When Michelle gave me the file, yes.
Just that one day, or have you reviewed them subsequently?
I believe just, that file. I mean, she has her paperwork that she's been looking over in my presence. And, but as far as saying, no.
Have you come to any opinion as to whether or not, and this is based on your experience in the, I think you said close to 100 homicides that you've done, have you come to an opinion or have you familiarized yourself enough with this case and with the police reports involved in this case to come to an opinion as whether or not you would have investigated this case as a homicide?
Objection to the question because it asks this witness for an opinion. She's not an expert and not listed as an expert in this case, at least, excuse me. So I object on that basis.
I'll join the objection.
And I'm going to join in that as well.
Okay. JoAnn.
No, I wouldn't investigate it because one, we've formed an acquaintance, and that would make it a conflict of interest, in my opinion. So no, I wouldn't.
Okay. I'm going to ask it this way.
Okay.
And don't answer because I assure you there's going to be an objection to this question. Do you believe JoAnn Matouk Romain was murdered? Do you believe she committed suicide? Or do you have some other belief?
Same objection and foundation.
Join as well.
I'll join full house with objections, so please.
I wouldn't render opinion on that.
Okay. Do you know if the Michigan State Police maintains records of gas cards that they give to officers?
I'm sure they do. Because it's a fiscal responsibility. That's like a checks and balance. Expenses used, expenses paid. I mean, for accounting purposes, I would gather.
Are they eventually destroyed? Do you know?
Hold on, do you mean the gas cards or the records?
The records.
Use of the gas cards?
Yeah, well, gas cards.
Eventually, there is a life expectancy for, holding documents within our department. What that is in terms of that fiscal, that's not my area of responsibility, so I don't know.
Do you know if records from gas cards that were used in 2010 would still be in existence, or if they would have been destroyed, if you know?
Excuse me, I do not know.
With regards to cell phones that are issued to, are any cell phones ever issued to law enforcement?
Yes,
What about, are you familiar with COMET?
yes.
What is COMET, please?
It's a drug team.
And it's an acronym, COMET, right?
Mhm.
Now, I forgot what it stands for. Do you happen to remember what it stands for?
Nope,
Okay, but it's something having to do with drugs.
yes.
It's probably what the D in COMET stands for, right?
Excuse me?
Okay.
DET stands for
That-
Enforcement Team. It's
Oh, okay.
COMET, like Haley's COMET.
All right, that's why.
County of Macomb Enforcement Team.
There you go, okay. That's why my stand-up routine never works. That right there is a classic example. Are COMET records, do you know if there's COMET records that are maintained through Michigan State Police, or if they're maintained through some other agency?
I don't know if their fiduciary is the person that handles their finances. I don't know.
What I'm asking you is, do you know if if an officer who's a member of COMET is given a gas card, would the records for that gas card be maintained by the Michigan State Police, or by Macomb County, or by some other agency? Do you know?
If I'm not mistaken, the COMET is a Michigan State Police task force. If that be the case, then Michigan State Police would maintain those records. How long they maintain them, I have no idea.
Cell phone records as well?
Yes,
And back in 2010, you said that your phone was either Nextel or Verizon, if I recall correctly, true?
yes.
Is that the phones, were all Michigan State Police issued cell phones on the same carrier?
I have no idea.
Okay. I see this before, and I believe you said the lawyers and Tim Matuk, but what I want to ask you is, after this lawsuit was filed, well, let me ask it this way. Let's say within the last year, have any of the defendants that I showed you before highlighted on that caption contacted you?
Yes,
And which defendants, not the attorneys, but which defendants have actually contacted you?
Tim
Which-
Matuk.
Only Tim Matuk.
Yes,
Kazahowski hasn't?
no.
McCarthy hasn't?
I don't even know who that is.
Zelensky hasn't?
No.
Okay. Tim Matuk has contacted you within the last year?
Yes.
How many times has Tim Matuk contacted you within the last year?
Are you talking about this case or in general? Because as I said, we have worked together on other cases.
Let me ask you this. Has he ever discussed this case with you
Yes,
in the past year?
yes.
How many times would you say?
Once that I'm certain of.
When was that, and where were you, please?
About 4 or 5 months ago, I was at the State Police Academy. I was in my current assignment. I was at some training. I got a call from Tim Matuk. I would say twice, check that. Informing me, one of the contacts was that he was informing me or asking me about his attorney or something about his attorney contacted me, something to that effect. But one that I'm certain of, he was frustrated with this case. He asked me if if the state police could give him a polygraph.
He asked you if the state police would
Yeah.
give him a polygraph?
Yeah.
And what did you say?
And I told him two things. One, my current assignment is professional standards. Two, that the state police will only do a polygraph in connection with a criminal investigation and not a civil investigation, from what I understand. I couldn't make that request regarding a civil case. I could make that request regarding a criminal case.
So as far as you know, has Tim Matuk ever taken a polygraph with regards to
I
this
have
case?
no idea.
Okay. And when is the first time that he asked you if he could take a polygraph?
That, I believe it was then,
Just then, about 4 months ago.
yeah.
Did you ask him to take a polygraph closer to the point in time when you spoke to Pazahowski at the station?
I'll tell you no. And I'll tell you matter-of-factly no. I can tell you that I don't offer people polygraphs. I don't believe in polygraphs. I don't offer people polygraphs. People have to say to me, I'll take a polygraph. There's not a case that you're going to find in the 23 years that I've worked that you're going to find out I use the polygraph as a tool. I wouldn't participate in one, and I wouldn't offer nobody one.
Do you know whether or not Daryl Hill or Denise Powell, either of them, have investigated any facts and circumstances surrounding the disappearance of JoAnn Matouk Romain more than what you have already testified to?
No, I do not know.
Okay. When you received a subpoena to come here today to testify, do you recall reviewing it?
Yes.
And did you notice the part that asks you to produce certain documents?
Yes.
And one of those documents was the email, any emails that you wrote, such as the email that you sent to Denise Powell.
Yes.
Do you have that email here with you today?
No.
Did you try to,
To Denise Powell.
I'm sorry, to Daryl Hill?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Let's go through that again. One of the things that was requested was the email that you sent to Daryl Hill, true?
True.
And do you have that here with you today?
No, I do not.
Can I ask why you don't have it? And I'm not accusing you of anything, I'm just asking why.
I don't care. I didn't research for a email that is no longer supported on a system that we no longer use. Back in 2010, the Michigan State Police used a different system. It was called GroupWise. We are currently on Outlook. I did not make any requests for anything. If you want something, you need to make a request by the state police to get it. I am not the person, I don't work for DIT. DIT is our people that does the electronics or the communications or what have you. And they deal with that. If you want that, I couldn't distribute it to you anyway, because by MSP policy, things that you request has to go through FOIA. I cannot release a document from the state police to anyone unless it's for official police business. So you would have to make a FOIA request to get that document.
Now, when you say that, you are aware that there's a document that's commonly referred to as a subpoena? Right?
Yes.
And are you saying that if I would FOIA that email instead of, I've subpoenaed that email a couple times, I want you to assume that for a second. If the subpoena has come up empty, are you saying that I should submit a FOIA request?
Well, if
to
you
get that email?
subpoenaed it, it's
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
I want to object to this whole line of questioning. You're asking her for legal advice, how you should pursue your own civil case, so really she's not in any position to tell you what to do or how to go about finding something. If you need help finding something, feel free and contact me. Go ahead and answer as best you can.
if you subpoenaed it, the Michigan State Police wouldn't have any problem with presenting it.
I just want to
So-
clarify something based on what your attorney just said, just for the record. I'm not seeking any legal advice. What the witness just testified to, if I understand it correctly, is that Michigan State Police policy is to only give documents subject to either police investigations or FOIA. I just wanted to make sure that she was not saying that there's an MSP policy to ignore subpoenas. I'm not asking for any legal advice, though, at all. So my question to you is, and I'm just asking you as far as the policy, as far as you know it, you're not saying that MSP will ignore a subpoena and only give documents subject to FOIA, are you?
No,
Let me lodge an objection to the mischaracterization of my understanding of the previous question. Now that the question has changed and the goalposts are in a different spot, go ahead and answer his question regarding your understanding of MSP policy, and let me further object. Any MSP policy speaks for itself. Go ahead.
MSP would not ignore a subpoena.
Okay, are these policies written down somewhere?
As far as how I release documents
Yes.
directly from me,
Well, no, as far as documents being produced, either subject to FOIA, subpoenas, depositions, request to produce, things of that nature.
Yes.
There's a written policy somewhere?
Yes.
You've seen it?
yes.
Is it in a document of some sort? Is it in a book, policies and procedures handbook that you've seen this? Is it just an email that goes around? Where have you seen this written?
It is a written policy, and I know for a matter of fact, I don't know the number offhand, because in my capacity as a commander of the professional standards section, I have violated a trooper for producing a police report and producing it at a hearing where it was not subpoenaed for issuing that, because she didn't go through the proper procedures. I know matter of factly that it's a policy. The policy number, I do not know. Our policies are maintained in an electronic database. That policy is there.
Okay. I want to go back to something that you said before just for a minute. When you said that Tim Matuk was in contact with you and asked you about a polygraph, do you know if that was before February of 2016?
I believe it was. I'm not sure, but I believe it was. Like I said, it was when I first got promoted. I got promoted in October. I think it was prior to 16. I think it was within the first couple of months. I'm thinking, I'm not certain, but I'm thinking.
Has Tim ever discussed the disappearance of JoAnn Matouk Romain with you subsequent to January 2010, besides for the 2 times that we know about this phone call about the polygraph and the voicemail that you returned?
No. And if I can make clear for the record,
Please.
any discussions that he's had with me in passing or whatever has always just been vague and just frustration with going through this process, from what I recall.
Okay. Just need a minute, please. Did you ever tell Pazahowski that the Michigan State Police would refuse to take over the case?
No,
Did you offer Pazahowski that you would assist them in any way possible?
I didn't offer that.
Is it possible that the only thing Pazahowski asked you to do was see if Bill Matuk and Tim Matuk would take polygraphs?
Objection asked and answered.
Go ahead.
The only conversation I remember was to conduct the interviews. I don't recall, I think we discussed it. He could have mentioned a polygraph, he could have mentioned that. I don't know. I remember him asking for us to conduct interviews. So I don't.
You never spoke to any Canadian authorities about this case, did you?
Nope.
Ever speak to the Coast Guard?
Had no reason to.
Ever speak to anybody at Grosse Pointe Farms?
Had no reason to. I wasn't involved in the investigation.
Is the only reason that you were not involved in the investigation because, as you put it, you don't clear people?
Objection asked and answered. It mischaracterizes this witness's testimony.
Please feel
I
free to
joined that
explain.
too, man.
I'll join the objection. Anyone else?
Please feel free to explain as much as you feel is necessary. I'm not trying to pigeonhole you.
No, it was never perceived that I would be doing the investigation. I was there to assess a case.
Other than you, do you know if there's anybody from the Michigan State Police that attempted to contact Tim Matuk at any point in time?
No,
That's a no, nobody did, or you don't know?
I don't know.
Okay. I have nothing further.
Lieutenant Powell, my name is Gus Morris, and I represent the officers from the city of Grosse Pointe Woods, as well as the city itself, who's named as a defendant in this case. And let me ask you a few questions about some names that haven't come up as we get started here. One of the named defendants is Lieutenant John Kasanke. Do you know who that is?
No, I don't.
To your knowledge, have you ever had any contact with him?
Not to my knowledge.
Same question with respect to the next defendant, Lieutenant John Ross. Do you know that individual?
I don't know him.
Have you ever had any contact with him to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Next individual is Keith Wazak from Grosse Pointe Woods. Do you know who that is?
The name sounds familiar. You know, like I said, I had 2 other investigations in that area. I don't know that, the name sounds familiar, but I don't know that I know that person or that
Okay.
I've ever met that person.
Let me ask a little more specifically. Can you say whether or not you have had any contact with Keith Wazak relative to the disappearance of JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No, I have not.
Thank you. Last individual I'll ask you about with respect to that is Anthony Shalhoub. Do you know who that is?
No.
And to your knowledge, have you had any contact with him?
No.
Okay. And then the obvious person I've left out is Andrew Pazahowski. You've already told us that you know him and have had contact with him relative to this matter, correct?
This and other matters, yes.
All right. That's my question. How long
Yes.
have you known Andrew Pazahowski?
When I got promoted in January of 2000, That was one of my first investigations. I assisted another detective on an investigation where a officer in his police department, at that time, I think Pasahowski was not of the rank that he currently is or was doing this investigation that we're here for. There was an officer, they had paid for him to get some training. He alleged he had been at the training but never attended the training, so it was perceived that the monies lost was part of, misrepresentation, and he was charged.
So this was, if I understand what you're saying, this was some misconduct alleged by a police officer associated with Growth Point Woods?
Yes, because he was, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
All right, I was going to say, and was Andrew Pasahowski someone who apparently was involved in the investigation into that individual?
Maybe internally, but not criminally. What they did is they just it was just, asked the state police to handle it, because it was one of their officers. Like I said, when I started this, oftentimes police departments will, kind of like, in a sense, recuse themselves, and in that, just to give a fair assessment that, one, they're not going after the officer, or two, they're not giving any favor if the officer's not charged, so that they relinquish the criminal investigation to us.
And when you say they, are you referring to Officer Pasahowski directly, or just the department in general?
The department, because if I'm remembering correctly, not only Pasahowski was present, he might have been a detective, I don't know. He was present, but there was another chief or somebody that we met with. But Pasahowski was present. He was sort of like, oftentimes when we do an investigation in another department, there'll be a point person from that police department that we make contact with, because you don't contact a chief for paperwork, So it'll be a point person that we make contact with to ascertain any evidence or documents that we need from within the department to assist us in getting that information. But, it was in that respect.
All right, based upon your interaction with Pasahowski during that investigation, did you form any opinion whether he was a good police officer, bad police officer, or no opinion at all?
It was no opinion at all. I mean, the contact was brief. It wasn't in that we worked together and we investigated, we hit the streets together or anything like that. It was no more than, passing off documents and introductions at that time.
Okay. Was there another investigation after that you were involved in where Pasahowski was a part of?
Well, he was, I'm not sure what his rank was then. I remember making contact with him. I don't know in what capacity. I know he was the contact person. There was a city comptroller or city official who was stealing gas, basically. There was a camera there. He was loading up his personal vehicle and all that in gas, so thereby misappropriation of resources and funds and such. So my contact was him. That contact might have been a little bit more direct with Pasahowski at that time, because I even gave him a nickname, called him Paz, because his entire name was, cumbersome to me at that time. But I affectionately called him Paz or what have you. And, when you make constant contact with, police officers, you develop, a rapport, if you would, like Tim and I, that's just part of the business.
Did you have some more investigative involvement with Pasahowski in that second investigation that you mentioned?
Yeah, because I kept him apprised of everything, from, he may have put me in touch with witnesses because there were police officers who witnessed the incident, getting evidence because there was a camera outside the facility. He was my contact person at that time. Like I said, I'm uncertain if he was a detective then or had gone up the ranks or not, but he was my contact person. So he got me everything that I needed and requested. When I got the charges on the gentleman, I let him know, I may have provided him with copies of whatever documents he needed to do an internal or whatever. I don't know. Like I said, it was a little bit more of a contact the second time than it was the first time.
And is it fair for me to say that you found his assistance helpful?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Of course.
Any other cases with him? That you
Just
can
those
recall?
two that I recall. That's why I want the record to be reflect. Being that I worked those other cases, there were some officers that was witnesses. I don't remember those names, but I don't know if I've ever come in contact with those names you read off
Right.
in my official capacity and an assistant. I don't know, but I don't recall the names.
Okay. During any of the investigations where you were involved with Pasahowski, did you ever get a sense that he was attempting to cover up or sweep under the rug misconduct by a police officer or public official?
No.
What about your relationship with Michelle Romain. You've told us a little bit about it, that it's somewhat of a social relationship.
Yes.
What I was curious about, if you could tell me, is how did the relationship begin?
Well, through pain, through a commonality of pain. I was 28, 29 when I lost my mom to breast cancer. And my mom was everything. And I know that pain as a young woman dealing with that pain. So just in talking to her, you know, through all her anger and this, I saw the pain. You know, it's familiar to me.
And then so after those initial contacts, and then in 2013, did you follow up with her? Did she continue to call you? Did she invite you over or out for coffee or something like that? How did that progress?
She wound up, you know, calling me several times and what have you, and along the way, it took months because I'm not the most open person. You know, it took months, but...
So she had to pursue you a little bit to get the relationship going, is that fair to say?
Object to the mischaracterization.
I wouldn't say a pursuit. I would say it was just, you know, because I told her, when she had contacted me and told me that my boss, you know, wasn't, you know, she had met my boss wasn't doing the case, you know, that's when I opened up to her, and I'm like, I'm familiar, you know, with the pain that you're going through. You know, at some point you need to heal, you know, things like that, you know, and you could call me. You know, I opened the door, you know. I told her, I said, well, you can call me. And
She accepted your invitation?
She did.
Now, when you say it like that, does that mean she did it a lot?
Well, Michelle has just got a strong personality. I mean, Michelle has a very strong personality, and she contacted me. You know, it wasn't to the point of, you know, anything harassing or anything like that, because I'm a very direct person, I'll tell you.
Right.
You know, so I offered to her because of the familiarity with the pain, and, you know, give me a call, you know. I mean, at some point you got to hear, we had a lot of things. It was eerie how familiar her circumstances was with her mom's death, her father, and, you know, a relationship from that and stuff like that. It was very similar to mine, and I knew the pain. I had healed from mine, you know, and I chose to take a forgiving stance and a healing. So I was just, you know, at some point, you know, you need to heal.
Okay.
So.
Now, we know that you were given a binder with some documents by her.
Yes.
Has she ever provided you with any other documentation relative to this case, even the civil case here?
No, just the binder of, just the binder of documents.
Has she ever showed you deposition transcripts, for
Oh,
example?
no, that's
Has she-
inappropriate. I wouldn't do that.
All right, I agree. Has she ever discussed the testimony that's been elicited in the numerous depositions we've had in this case?
Absolutely not. That's
Okay.
inappropriate, and I would disclose that sitting down here, because that's inappropriate. I don't do inappropriate.
And so what you're telling me is that if she did try to bring that up, it would be something you'd say, that's not appropriate, I don't want to talk about that.
Of course. Yep.
It certainly is the duty of the Michigan State Police to investigate crimes, correct?
Yes.
And those crimes can include crimes committed by ordinary citizens or public officials, as you said, right?
Yes.
And as a sworn police officer, that's sort of where the duty comes from. That's one of the things that you swear to uphold the laws and the Constitution, correct?
Yes.
All right. As I understand it, you've told us that Michelle delivered in 2013 to you a binder with many, many documents relative to this matter, right?
Yes.
And if I'm correct, let me know. If I'm not, also let me know that during this conversation or meeting when the binder was delivered, she suggested to you at least that it was her belief that there was either corruption, criminality, or some wrongdoing by various individuals, police officers included, relative to her mother's disappearance, correct?
Yes.
All right. And at that point in time, I think you indicated that investigation was not yours, and you were not involved in the investigation in any way, and that's why you delivered those binders with the documents to, I think you said Lieutenant Denise Powell, correct?
Yes.
And certainly Lieutenant Powell has the same obligation of any other police officer with the Michigan State Police to investigate crime. To your knowledge, has Lieutenant Powell herself done any investigation relative to the information received from Michelle Romain in the binder?
She did not, she would not have, because, if I can say,
Go ahead, please.
Michigan State Police don't just embed themselves in somebody else's cases. There is etiquette in dealing with other police departments. People have this perception that, oh, you're the Michigan State Police, you can go in, you can take the case, you can do this, you can do that. That's a perception. It's not real. There is politics involved in law enforcement. You don't do that. You don't step on another agency's toes. When we get involved, it's at the request, oftentimes, of the other agency saying, hey, I don't have the resources, I don't have the knowledge to do this investigation. There are times that citizens come to us to ask you to join in an investigation. The department may reach out to the other. I don't know. I don't know if any of that was done. I don't know.
But you do know that she didn't do an investigation
I do
herself?
know that.
Okay. And do you know whether or not she asked anyone who might have been under her in the chain of command to do an investigation?
I don't know that.
Okay. But you're certainly not telling me that the only time the state police get involved in criminal investigations is when other agencies ask them to get involved.
It's multiple reasons why we get involved in different cases.
And so there are instances where you may open an investigation into a public entity or an official or a police officer where the complaint or allegations don't come from another public official, but in fact come from a citizen.
Yes, but it has to have, from my perspective, from doing public corruption investigations, it has to be more than a perception.
There has to be some evidence in support of the allegation. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay. And certainly Lieutenant Powell would be in a position to determine whether the information that Michelle gave her in this binder, in fact, was sufficient to support the allegation she was making to warrant further investigation. Is that fair to say?
When you say Lieutenant Powell, are you talking in third person or are you talking about?
Denise Powell.
Denise Powell.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
She would have the knowledge to, you know, she made case assignments. That was her job. She assigned cases to me, so she would have knowledge. But it's not that she, I don't know. It's not that she wouldn't make that call based off of, I don't know, because I don't know what her meeting was with Michelle, so I'll stand corrected at not making assumptions.
We're best to ask her, is what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
Please.
And just to make sure I understood the facts as you understand them, Michelle Romain met with Lieutenant Denise Powell on more than one occasion?
Yes.
Do you know how many?
I believe it's 2.
And were those meetings sometime in 2013 after Michelle first delivered the binder to you?
Yes.
All right, so that's now 3 years ago.
It will be 3 years in November.
Thank you. All right. You had some testimony, and we're asked some questions about your or the use of the word clear. You stated that you felt that to be odd. Is that a fair recounting of your testimony?
Yes, it is.
Let me ask you this. You've certainly been around police officers for a long time. Have you ever heard officers use the word clear to describe any police activity?
Yes.
Would an example of that be, can you clear him through lean? Would that be an example?
Yes.
And so by that, what would you mean if an officer said, I cleared him through lean, or could you clear him through lean? What does that mean?
That means you would run the name through lean, and you would determine if there was any outstanding warrants for that person.
Okay.
And if there was no outstanding warrants or no outstanding issues with that individual, that person would be clear and lean.
Understood. How about an officer is dispatched to a call of some sort, a domestic violence call, and he's able to resolve it one way or the other? Is it a common use of the word clear for an officer to say, I've cleared the scene?
Yep.
Now, that means something a little bit different than when you clear somebody through lean.
Yes.
So you would agree with me that the word clear has multiple meanings in the police lexicon, if I can use that word?
Yes.
Okay. And in the case here where Pazahowski used it, you, in your experience, felt it to be somewhat odd, right?
Yes.
Okay. But clear doesn't necessarily mean prove his innocence, does it?
You would have to
have to
refer
ask-
that to the person who's using the term.
Right, so how he met what he meant by using the word clear, we'd have to ask him, correct?
Not necessarily, because I am intelligent enough to discern in the context of a conversation what somebody's saying to me.
Okay.
And if you ask me to interview somebody for the purposes of clearing that person, it is clear to me that you're saying clear them of the allegations. That's what my perception was. And if it wasn't, when I said we don't do that, if the terminology was meant in a different way, in my opinion, it would have been communicated to me that, hey, wait a minute, I didn't mean it that way. I meant it another way.
Okay. But the activity, apparently from the conversation that you had with Pazakowski that was, quote unquote, to clear, was to interview him.
Yes.
Because he wanted you to interview them, right?
Yes.
So the interview may have resulted in him being, quote unquote, cleared because maybe he had an alibi or something, or maybe it could have resulted in him being not cleared because he couldn't substantiate where he was at the time of the alleged misconduct.
Even if somebody presents an alibi in an investigation, does not make them clear. If somebody presents an alibi, it could be a well thought out plan.
Right. It might be. So it might be clear. It might not be.
I would never use the terminology, and I've worked several homicides and missing persons, and because I do a lot with kids,
Right.
missing persons kids. I just want to make that clear. It's my task force that I worked on. We would interview people in vast amounts. When we set up a command post, it's a missing child or a homicide, and we set up a command post, tips would come in, and you would follow up on the tip, and you would say, well, that person has an alibi, or that person wasn't in that area. You stay clear of the word clear because it's a dangerous word. When you say you clearing somebody, you putting that in an unforgettable pile where it might come back later that, yeah, they had an alibi, they said this, that, and other, but it's something else that connected them to the clear. So, and get this, it could have been something else. I'm a very matter-of-fact person because I sit and testify. In the last 20 years of my career, I sit in court and have said in a lot of testimony with high-profile attorneys and lawyers and everything, and people are matter-of-fact and specific. If you say something out of context or it's the wrong word, you get all this object, you know? So I'm a very matter-of-fact person. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just being specific with you all.
Right.
When the term used clear with me, that's what I perceived it to be, and it was, you know, what he meant by it, sir, I have no idea.
He might have had a different
He
perception.
might have had a different perception.
Right. And one of the reasons it's maybe dangerous to use the word clear is because it is subject to different interpretations, right?
Exactly.
You're not certain whether this conversation with Pazakowski occurred before or after JoAnn Matouk Romain's body was found. Is that?
I'm not actually certain. Part of me want to say it was before the body was discovered, but I'm not certain. And this being a record, I don't want to say something that's not.
Let's take let's make the assumption that this occurred before her body was found. The conversation.
Okay, I'll play.
Now, at that point in time, when you're asked to assess the case, what you're assessing is a missing person, correct?
No. You know what I was assessing?
Go ahead.
I was making an assessment as to what resources that department would need to further their investigation. That's it. It was to go out. It wasn't assessing their productivity, what they had or had not done, where they were at in the investigation. It was a request for the state police's assistance. You go out and you see, is what I'm told, see what resources that are needed and what they provide, what we can provide. And this is your point of contact. So I was making an assessment as to what resources were requested and needed. And when I say that, it's because this is what happens with the state police. When we get an investigation, we set up a command center. Right. It's a command post. We identify from the agency who's going to be the OIC, from that agency who's going to be the OIC from the state police agency. OIC from the state police agency, if it's not saying, here, state police, take over this case. We just did this down in Trenton. when the man down there got killed. They hadn't had a homicide in 20 years. Step in, help us out. We set up a command post at their PD. We had a detective from their PD and a detective from our PD. We had multiple detectives assigned to hitting the ground doing different things, but it's a command post, and that person is set up. You know, each person is set up and identified. So it's multiple resources that are pulled in that type of investigation. Do we need K9? Do we need diver? You know, like, what do we need?
Right.
You know, do we need the crime lab? Do we need, you know, what do we need? So that MSP person is just the contact person for making sure whatever resources that agency need is pulled.
Right. And that Trenton case involved the finding of a body, evidence of foul play, suspicion of murder, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that someone who is just missing and hasn't been missing, quote unquote, for that long, if in fact the meeting with Pazahowski occurred in a week or so after she'd gone missing, is a little different priority than someone who's been a body that's been found and is deceased and suspicion of foul play.
Well, at my point, yes. Was you talking about at the initial point?
Yes.
You know, it depends on how the department handles it. You know, we as the Michigan State Police, we do things according to our letters and our policies. And that, you know, at the point a week later when he contacted me, we've set up. We've assisted in cases where we've set up a command center, you know, later on when, you know, the department said, you know what, now we realize that we need some more resources. Can you come in and help us? I mean, it has happened.
Right. And clearly it didn't happen in this case. You didn't get a request for that type of involvement, did you?
No.
Right. And you would agree with me that the MSP don't get involved in every missing person case that comes up in the state of Michigan?
No, not unless requested.
Right, and sometimes the local agencies investigate the missing person, and if then the person is found, if there's evidence of criminal activity, the investigation is continued by whatever police department was involved. That does happen, correct?
It can be continued by them, us, jointly, separately. It's a number of things that could occur.
And even today, 6 years or more after the body was discovered, if there was evidence presented to the Michigan State Police of criminal activity relating to her, that would be something they would investigate.
If it was broached that the state police handled those findings, as opposed to the other agency, if that request was done, I'm sure they would.
Okay. And so if either of these departments that are represented here today would say to the Michigan State Police, come in now, you're welcome to look at all of our files, investigate this matter, and look into what we've done, suggest other avenues that we might pursue, that is something that the state police would entertain doing, correct?
If it was an official request.
Absolutely.
If it was an official request, I'm not sure who makes that decision, you know, or how the decision will roll out. But it could actually happen. You know, you could request it, it could happen. I don't make that decision, so.
Okay.
You know.
And if someone were to make an official request from either the farms or the woods, who would they make the request to?
Because their location is within what we call considered the 2nd District, Metropolitan 2nd District. The commander for this district is Captain Monica Yesh.
Okay.
That command officer, their highest ranking command officer in the agency, will reach out to her via direct phone call, and she would subsequently request a written letter requesting that.
Okay. And of course, she would be the one to make the decision whether or not anything would take place on the part of the Michigan State Police after the request was made.
Well,
right?
let's be honest.
Yes.
Everybody has a boss leading up to our director.
Yes.
And she would probably have to run something up the chain because everybody has a boss.
Okay.
She might deliver the news, but she might not make the final decision.
All right. Let me see if I have any other questions. Give me just a second. Thank you. Last question, did you get any sense whatsoever in your dealings with anyone from the Grosse Pointe Woods Police Department relative to this investigation that Pazahowski or someone else were seeking to cover up or protect Tim Matuk in any way?
You know, I didn't get a sense of, I didn't make an assessment of anybody's character in this situation. And I didn't make it then, and I don't want to make it down.
Okay. All right. That's all I have.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Lieutenant.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm sorry, can, before we start with you, can I go back to the rest
Sure,
of them,
absolutely.
please? Thank you.
Time is 12:37, we're now back on the record.
Again, good afternoon, Lieutenant.
Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Pete Peacock, and I represent Tim Matuk.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Lieutenant, prior to 2013, you did not have a personal relationship with Michelle Matuk, is that correct?
No, Michelle Romain?
Romain, I'm sorry, Romain. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You had met Michelle Romain prior to establishing the personal relationship, correct?
No, I hadn't met her in person. It was a phone call.
A phone call from her on the day that you were at the Grosse Pointe Woods Police
Yes,
Department?
and that's it. I had never seen her before, never met her until the day Scott Lewis brought her to my office.
So she came to your office in 2013, correct?
Yes.
She brought this binder with her, correct?
Yes.
That binder was ultimately sent to your supervisor, Denise Powell, is that
Yes.
correct? Where is that binder now?
Turn it back over to Michelle.
Okay, so Ms. Romain has that
Yes,
binder.
after the state police, and I know this from a conversation with my boss, after their second meeting, when it was communicated to her that the state police wasn't going to be involved in the investigation, my boss told me she turned that binder back over to Denise Powell. I'm sorry, my boss Denise Powell told me she turned that binder back over to Michelle Romain.
In your initial meeting with Michelle Romain, did she ever indicate to you or ever tell you what she thought the motive would have been for Tim Matuk to be involved in the disappearance and or death of JoAnn Romain?
The motive, no, if so, I don't recall what it is. I don't, you know,
If she would have, would you have written that down somewhere?
no. Because as I said, I wasn't assessing it. My boss had to assess that.
And your boss did do an assessment and declined to get involved, is that correct?
Yes.
How long have you known Tim Matuk?
The professional contact between Tim Matuk and I started sometime after he started with the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office.
You don't enjoy a social relationship with him at all, is
No,
that correct?
no.
Strictly professional.
Yes, I'm sorry.
In that professional relationship, how many cases have you and Tim Matuk worked on?
Directly?
Correct.
2. He's assisted me, I believe, you know, with inmates being locked up, maybe getting, you know.
MAs, I'm sorry?
Inmates.
Oh, inmates, I'm sorry.
You know, being locked up, sometimes I have to have them transported from the jail over to the prosecutor's office for questioning or something. I can't say that he's done that personally. I know he's assisted me in a lot of different cases, you know.
Would you describe his assistance as being a very competent detective?
Well, yeah, as far as I know, I mean,
Would you describe his work ethic as being a high work ethic?
I don't know. I mean,
In your involvement with him?
in my involvement with him, yes.
Would you describe him as being a honest detective?
Again, you talk about somebody's
In your involvement,
character.
in your involvement.
In my involvement,
Right.
yeah, I mean, yeah, we recovered evidence, yes.
Okay. When's the last time that you worked with Tim Matuk?
It was on the I don't know which one was first. I don't know if it was Bashara that was first. I think it was Bashara first. But then it was the one with the St. Clair Shores officer who, daughter's cell phone, or his involvement, something with somebody's cell phone, the police officer's daughter's cell phone was taken from her in a snatch and grab. And the police officer did some inappropriate things to go and recover that cell phone. So that's the case I'm talking about. I don't remember the specifics of it, but in both cases, I worked with Tim along with another investigator from the Wayne County Prosecutor, Corey. I don't remember Corey's last name, and I'm sorry. But nonetheless, on both occasions, I went with them to recover that evidence on both particular cases.
And your last communication with Tim Matuk relative to this matter, I believe you said was it 4 months ago?
Somewhere since my promotion. My promotion was October the 11th, 2015.
Right.
And I'm sure it wasn't as recent as 2 months ago.
Okay.
But somewhere in that window, he contacted me, clearly frustrated, saying, can you just give me a polygraph or something, you know? And that was the nature of that conversation, you know?
And what did you tell him? What was your response to him on that?
Like I told him, one, I'm at, professional standards. Two, that's not something Michigan State Police does. We do polygraphs is connected with a criminal investigation, not necessarily a civil investigation. And because it's a civil situation, he might want to hire like an independent polygrapher or something to that effect.
And what we're here today, all of us here today, is on a civil matter. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It's not a criminal case, is it?
No.
Okay. Lieutenant, I want to thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I'll pass.
Yes, sir.
Down to this guy here.
Okay.
Lieutenant Powell, my name's Kevin Thomas. I'm here on behalf of all the people that I mentioned earlier today, and to streamline this process a little bit, I'm going to have this marked as Exhibit 2.
What is that, please?
It's just a list of the City of Grosse Pointe Farms and then the various entities that you've named that I represent.
Okay.
All right, Lieutenant Powell, I just want to know if you had any contact of any kind with any of those individuals relating to the missing person investigation of JoAnn Romain.
No.
And did you have any contact with any of those individuals regarding the subsequent investigation of any of the police officers themselves regarding impropriety?
No. That McCarthy, I'm sorry, McCarthy, what police department is he with?
Grosse Pointe Farms.
Okay. McCarthy is a familiar name. I don't know if it was with Grosse Pointe Farms PD. If I had any contact with him, it was not related to this or any allegations of public corruption by him.
Right.
And I'm just saying that, sir, because I don't know if I've had contact with him.
Right, and that's what I was just asking.
Okay.
Nothing regarding the disappearance of JoAnn Romain, nothing regarding the investigation of her afterwards, the homicide, potential suicide, nothing like that. You never contacted any of those individuals about that, correct?
No, sir, I haven't.
And even if the Michigan State Police was asked to investigate this matter, you would not feel it appropriate for you to render an opinion at this point in time,
I
correct?
wouldn't feel appropriate to be involved in the investigation in any way, render any opinions of anybody involved. It just wouldn't be appropriate. I'm tainted. I'm tainted. I've established a personal relationship with somebody involved in this. I've had several conversations where, where I was present, regarding opinions and stuff involving this investigation. So no, I wouldn't.
All right, and in that regard, have you had any conversations with Michelle or Kelly about the individuals on that list that I just handed you, Exhibit 2, about the allegations that have been alleged against them?
I can't say yes or no, because when they say police, they it's just police, officers involved or whatever. I don't know if those individuals had anything to do with this investigation, but their allegations is just the police, period. It's not pinpointing every single name that I would be familiar with. It's just saying the police,
All right, and fair enough. And in that regard, do you remember any specific allegations towards the City of Grosse Pointe Farm Police Department, or is that still just general?
It is just general to that department, to Grosse Pointe Farms, to Grosse Pointe Woods. It's general, but it is to that department.
Okay, well, what allegations did they talk to you about the City of Grosse Pointe Farms?
Basically, it's, the manner in which the case was, handled. I can't say specifics. I don't remember any specifics. I don't remember all of that, But I know for a fact it's regarding the agencies that was involved with the handling of her mom, disappearance or death. That's all I know.
And do you have these conversations with both Michelle and Kelly?
These are not necessarily conversations with comments made.
By Michelle?
Yes.
By Kelly as well?
I don't know if Kelly said anything. You know, most of my conversations are with Michelle. You know, she's there. Sometimes, you know, Kelly's there. If she chimed in or not, I don't know.
All right, but regardless, you don't remember any of the specifics of those allegations beyond impropriety that's being alleged as against the city of Grosse Pointe
Correct.
Farms and its officers,
Correct, sir. Correct.
That's all I've got.
I have some follow-up questions. I'm sorry. I heard you say the term independent polygraph examiner. Can you tell me what that is, please?
That would be somebody not employed by the state police.
So that would be anybody who wants at any time could hire an independent polygraph examiner and take a polygraph, true?
Yes.
Do you know if Tim Matuk did that in this case?
I have no idea.
Something that Mr. Peacock asked you about is if Mr. Matuk, I believe the words were, comes across as an honest detective.
Yes.
I don't know
No,
if that's
not what I
exactly
said.
the terms were, but the word honest was in there, wasn't it?
Okay, if you say so.
Well, you tell me.
I wouldn't answer the question, sir, because I didn't feel it was proper for me to answer that. I don't know these people. I know these people working with these people. I wouldn't speak to anybody's content of anybody's character. I'm not of that, because, you know, being that I investigate public corruption and any other crimes out here, anybody's capable of anything. I can't speak to somebody's capacity as to what their moral fiber is or their content of their character is. I don't know any of these people like that. I don't know anybody like that.
Are you vouching for anybody's honesty here today?
Absolutely not.
None of the defendants?
Nobody's.
Not Michelle?
Not Michelle,
Not Kelly?
nobody's. Nope.
I also think you said something about when Mr. Morris was asking you questions, that's the gentleman seated directly to your right, that if anybody would make a formal written request to the MSP, that the MSP would consider it. Did you say something to
I
that
didn't say
effect?
anybody.
I'm sorry,
you
any
know.
police agency.
If a police agency made a formal request to the state police, it would be looked at, it would be viewed.
Did the Grosse Pointe Woods do that in this case?
Not to my knowledge.
The meeting that you had with Pazahowski that we discussed certainly doesn't fit the description of the request that you're referring to, does it?
I've responded there as a result of a request. How that request, I communicated to you all.
Okay.
I don't know how that request was made. I just know my response to him was at the direction of my supervisor, and I don't know how that request came across, whether it was a phone call, whether it was a letter. I have no idea.
And
You
I
said-
I wanted to place an objection on the record to your previous question that the witness just answered, Foreman Foundation.
You said something about Trenton. I want to ask you about Trenton for a second. There was a murder that took place in Trenton,
Yes.
and Trenton made a formal written request to the MSP to assist.
I don't think it was formal written. It was active homicide. They found that scene immediately and they acted immediately. I think it was as simple as a phone call. It could have later been followed up with a written request, but we wasn't asked to take over it or to conduct it. We was asked to assist in that they didn't have the resources or the knowledge, you know, to do that. So
Because, go ahead.
it was immediate. As soon as they found the body, I was literally sitting in a training class with several other detectives. And in the middle of the class was interrupted, and it was like, you, let's go. We got an active scene, let's go. So I don't know how that came about. I just know I was requested to go.
Now, in Trenton, is there a particularly high murder rate? Do you know?
Not to my knowledge. That was the first one. They had communicated to us, and when I say us, I was present. I was there at the PD when they said we haven't had a murder in 20 years.
Do you know how many murders have taken place in Grosse Pointe Farms in the last 20 years?
No, I don't.
Do you know if it's particularly high murder rate in Grosse Pointe Farms?
I don't know.
Now, again, Mr. Morris asked you if Grosse Pointe Woods right now would make a formal written request to the MSP would consider that request, review it?
Anything's possible. That's not at my level.
Okay.
So I wouldn't know.
And would the MSP have to examine the evidence in deciding whether or not they should get involved or respond to such a request?
No, they don't evaluate evidence. They evaluate the nature of the request. MSP is an assisting agency. It's rare that we turn down somebody's request to assist them in an active criminal investigation. It is a rarity.
It could be I'm misunderstanding this, but if Grosse Pointe Woods, I'm just going to try to clarify. If Grosse Pointe Woods right now would submit a formal written request to MSP, give them all of the reports that were generated, both by Grosse Pointe Woods, Grosse Pointe Farms, the Coast Guard, Canadians, anybody who wrote any law enforcement that wrote any reports on this, and asked MSP for assistance in determining if this was a murder, and if it was, in tracking down the murderer. Is that something that the MSP would do?
I don't know.
Okay.
Being that it was already presented in a sense, you know, on a couple of occasions, and they said no, I don't know. I don't know if somebody would step up and say, well, let's take that. I don't know that.
In the binder that was given to you and subsequently to Denise Powell, do you know if that binder contained any Coast Guard reports?
I don't know. I don't remember.
You've heard the term clear somebody through lien.
Yes.
Police officers have used that term to you.
Yes.
Did you find that odd?
No.
Police officers have used the term cleared the scene.
Cleared the scene, cleared the house, and the search warrant.
And
Yes.
none of that strikes you as odd, right?
No.
When a police officer asks you to clear somebody, does that strike you as odd?
Yes.
Can you explain the difference between the use of the word clear, and why is it that when a police officer asks you to clear somebody, you find that as odd as opposed to clearing somebody through lien, for example?
Was object asked and answered?
I swear I explained this, but
You did.
I'll withdraw
entertain
the,
you.
okay, go ahead, very quickly, please.
I asked, when he asked me that, in terms of the word clear, because of the fact that just a basic contact interview, I could have an 8-hour interview with somebody. Just because they appear to have an alibi, just because they clear to be able to account for their time, just because they vehemently deny, does not mean that that person is cleared. I might not have a fact to say I can present this to the prosecutor's office as him being a suspect. It might not contain that, but it still doesn't clear a person. So when somebody say clear someone, to me, it's just odd. It's not a terminology I would use or that I'm familiar with being used in terms of interviewing somebody.
How many other police officers have asked you to clear somebody?
In an interview?
Yeah, no. How many police officers have asked you to clear somebody?
Well, you're doing the quotes.
To clear, because that's the word that you used was clear. What I'm asking you is not how many times officers have asked you to interview people. I'm asking you specifically how many times have other police officers asked you to clear somebody?
Never.
Okay. Did you ever talk to the FBI about any investigation? The FBI never reached
Wait
out
a
to you?
minute, I'm sorry. Yes, I did. Yep.
When is it that you spoke to the FBI?
I have no idea.
Do you know how many times you spoke to the FBI?
I believe it was once.
And do you know when it was?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I spoke to somebody that I formerly worked with on the task force, the public corruption task force.
Can I ask that person's name? I'll give you two names and you tell me if it's one of them. Fair enough?
Fair.
Hunt Ondeco?
I think it was Hunt.
It was Hunt.
Dave Hunt.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions.
I have a follow-up regarding, could Lieutenant, just the FBI contact. Do you know when it was?
No, I don't.
Do you know who initiated it?
He contacted me.
Okay. And you can't place it in a frame of time relative to when you spoke with Pazahowski?
I could say it was within the last year.
Within the last year, so 2015 or 16?
Yes.
And you said he contacted you?
Yes.
Do you know how it was he came to be involved so that he would contact you?
He was contacted by Michelle Romain.
And what, if anything, did he ask you when he made contact with you?
I don't know.
Did he ask you to do anything?
No, he didn't ask me to do anything.
Did he ask you to answer any questions about what you knew?
I don't even remember the conversation.
Okay. How long did it last?
It was quick.
Okay. Can you give me the gist of the conversation without remembering exactly what was said?
I'm trying to.
All right.
I guess Michelle had mentioned my name to him, that I had went to the PD and did an assessment. There was follow-up conversation, but I'm telling you, I honestly don't recall. I was in the middle of that criminal investigation with that Melendez guy.
Okay.
And I was busy, and it was quick. I don't know, I don't recall the specifics of that conversation.
Okay. Was it just one contact? Or were there more than one?
I believe, but I was in contact with them about the Melendez situation as well. You see what I'm saying? I was in the midst of that investigation, and I was contacted by them about that investigation and about that investigation. So I can't separate the context of the conversations.
Okay.
If we were talking about one and segue into the other, or I just can't call it.
Do you remember him saying to you if there was anything that he was going to do relative to JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No, I don't.
Okay. So you don't know what he did, if anything?
No.
And you didn't do anything at his request?
He didn't request me to do anything.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay.
Lieutenant, just a couple more.
Okay.
Lieutenant, do you know why anyone would call in the Michigan State Police to clear someone of wrongdoing? Do you know
Do I know why they would call?
why someone would call in the MSP?
When you say clear, I got a problem with that term, so I don't know what you're talking about. When you say
Okay.
that term, it just not something we do.
Used in that sense.
Using that sense, we don't clear people, sir.
Okay. You said Michelle Romain spoke to you about her dad. Is that correct? Or her father?
I don't recall saying that, but well, you talking about our friendship, like we
Right,
got
right,
acquainted, like
right.
it was issues with her. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what did she tell you about her dad?
Well, I know her father took up with her mom's best friend after her mom and wind up marrying her or something like that. So yeah.
Did she tell you that her father married her mother's best friend?
Through our acquaintance along the way,
Right.
while we were acquainted, her father married the woman.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
I do know that.
Lieutenant, did you have a conversation with Mr. Radner's office?
He called me once or twice. I don't know. Yeah, I did have a conversation with Mr. Radner. Yes.
What was the nature of that conversation?
To find out about, like, asking me, what did I do with the case? Did I investigate the case? Is there a report? You know, just that. Just basically what I've talked about here.
And how long was that conversation, if you recall?
It was short, because I was short and snippy.
Okay, very good.
If you can picture that.
Clearly, you didn't tell him what you told us today.
Not all of that. I mean, I did it succinctly. I honestly did. In a nutshell, you know, I laid out the facts. Listen, this is what I did. I was asked to go there. I was asked to make contact with Pasahowski to see what resources they needed. He told me that he wanted me to conduct interviews with these two individuals to clear these two people. I told him we don't do that. I talked to my boss, you know, and told my boss what happened. I recall, I don't know if this much got out in terms of talking to Michelle and Tim on that day and returning their call. I don't know if all that got out, but it was just a point of frustration on my part. And I try to be professional, but sometimes stuff seeps out, you know, that I was being contacted several times for something I didn't conduct an investigation on. So I communicated my frustrations with that, you know.
When was that call? Do you remember?
I have no, listen, I think it was somewhere around the time I got promoted. And I'm just trying to use pinpoint days that's significant in my life.
That's fine.
Okay? I think it was it had to have been sometime around the fall of 2015.
Okay.
I think.
That's fine. You had the one call. Is that correct? Just one call, Mr. Ryder's office?
I think it was just one call.
Did he attempt to contact you again?
You know what? He had called me several times. He finally got me, or I finally returned his call.
Okay. Where did he call you at?
On my cellular.
How did you get your cell phone?
I don't know if he got it from Michelle, or I don't know where he got it from. Okay. I don't know if it's on my voicemail. I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Okay. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. That's a wrap?
You're
We're done?
finished.
Thank you.
You better get going quick.
Thank you.
101 that
Nice to meet you, Lieutenant.